Hello and welcome to the latest instalment in our Lunch and Learn webinars. Today's topic is managing and measuring team performance. My name is Sarah Fry. I'm the Head of Membership and Marketing here at the Institute of Quarrying. These Lunch and Learn webinars are designed to give a short overview on a range of topics aligned to the skills wheel. The webinar itself is recorded today, so will be made available to all registrants. Look out for that follow-up email with the links to the recording and all other past webinars as well. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please just type them into the questions box on your screen, and if there's time, we'll answer these at the end of the presentation. If we don't have time, then any questions that are submitted will be answered and we'll distribute them to attendees after the webinar. At the end of today's session, you'll receive a short feedback form, so please do take the time to complete this as it will help us to develop webinars for the future. If you enjoy this month's webinar, then next month's webinar is all about creating the right environment for a coaching and mentoring culture, and it's going to be presented by our own Julian Smallshaw of the Institute of Quarrying. Just before I introduce today's speaker, just draw your attention to the upcoming branch events that are taking place around the country. If you want more information on any of these, then please contact the local branch or visit the IQ website at quarrying.org. These events, like this webinar actually, provide really valuable CPD opportunities for all members. So, on to today's speaker. Managing and measuring team performance is going to be delivered today by Dave Lees, Senior Lecturer at the University of Derby. So, welcome, Dave.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's Dave here, folks, and it's a pleasure to be actually talking to you, and I will hopefully keep to time, and Sarah will make sure that I do. So, guys, I'm going to get straight into it because half an hour is not a huge amount of time to cover some of these subject matters. Now, what I'm trying to do here is provide some sort of stimulus for thinking. And then if you think about what you're doing with teams and managing teams and getting the best out of them, then what you can then do is try and do something different. And at the end of this, I would really like you to have some ideas that I'm going to push into you, some of those ideas to do something different about the way that you manage with teams. Okay, let's just talk generally at the moment about teams as a whole. The value of a team, if you think about it, and I want you to think about the people around you that you're working with. First and foremost, teams can be formal, teams can be informal. The people that you work with will come together to do projects, they'll come together to on a formal basis to complete something that your place of work requires, and at other times they'll form to do different types of projects. And teams are very actually fluid when you think about it. Before I get into the actual team working process, what I'd really like to do is get you to think about the background that we work in today's environment. And that brings me to first slide. So think about the environment that you are working in at the moment. Now, this slide covers a massive area actually, and just have a look at those for a minute and relate it to what you're doing. You'll find the markets are changing. You'll find Brexit is around, politics is around, social beliefs are around. There's an awful lot going on that you're having to deal with. And the people that you work with or manage, if you're a manager, there's an awful lot going on that people have to deal with. And that creates a pressure. I'd like you to look particularly at the red ones, because I'm looking at teams as teams of people working in a business environment. Specifically, at least. And think about this for a minute. The environment that you work in, there's a worker's belief, there's a worker's knowledge. I would say that worker's knowledge is increasing. Your knowledge is increasing. Your rights are also increasing. Communication methods are also increasing. So I want you to think about the pressures that causes. And we'll discuss that in a moment. Okay. A little bit I want to add to all of this is that if you think about it, we're coming to you over the medium of the internet. And the internet makes things very, very much more available to us. And a vast amount of information reaches us through that method. You've got mobile phones now, which they tell me very confidently have more computing power than the computer that took people to the moon, and so on and so forth. And that's in our hands all the time. So you get knowledge out of that, and you have to deal with all that knowledge, all that information coming in. And that's what teams have to face too. Okay, so let's have a look at a little bit of theory. Now, I'm an academic, I'm supposed to be. I would just like to say to you, I need to take you through some bits of theory that are relevant. They're old, by the way. You can go on the internet and find these. And if you're interested and a nerd like me, then, sorry, I'm not really that bad. But I think you could go and have a look at some of these theories and see whether it works or not. I want to introduce this one first because even though it's old, it's very relevant. The point I'm trying to make here is that with things coming at us at work and things changing all the time, then that has an effect on us. And I'm going to show you here. This is what's known as the Kubler-Ross curve. You can look it up. The idea is that if you look at somebody's mood through a process of change, then, where's my mouse gone? There we go. What happens is in the process of change, there's potentially a period of shock, then there's a period of denial, and then as the curve goes down over time, people might get a bit upset about that, to the point that when they let go of what's happening before, then mood starts to increase. So you've got mood against time, and at first it's quite positive, then it can go lower, and then it will increase. Now, when it increases, the important thing about that is that people move on at that stage, and that's when you start doing new things. Okay, so you consolidate. As you can see where my mouse is pointing. Every time I press this, my mouse disappears. Not worry, we'll talk it through. You get a period of consolidation and you get reflection and learning towards the end of this curve. Now, okay, that's a very stylized curve and not everybody goes through such huge processes. But I want you to think about that in terms of people actually following something like that process. And that's through a process of change. Now let's have a look at the next one. Because all I've done is I've said, right, with so much information coming towards us, people trying to work together throughout the process of a significant change or even an insignificant change, but what's happening is there is change on change on change on change, and people get very overloaded. Now, you may, as an individual, think about this. You might like the process of change. Some people do. But I'd argue that the majority of people find change sometimes a bit difficult. The experience that they have, and this curve shows it, is fairly normal. But people can do things to help themselves. And you, if you are working with people, can do a lot yourself to help people through that change. Now, if you look at the writing in red on the side of this slide, managers, for instance, you can support individuals, you can drive and support the change, and you can use emotional intelligence to help people through the process of change. Now, think about this. Imagine if you can accept that people, when they're working through change and working together, that when something happens, their mood changes, then if you can flatten those mood changes out and get people into realizing that things are moving forward and things might be better, then you can help people through that. Okay, now bear with me. You may be thinking this isn't very much associated with a team and a group of people and the value of a group of people. But now let's add another layer onto it. And again, old theory here, look at the bits in yellow. this is old theory, but it's no less relevant, and there's a logic behind it that I want to appeal to you in the way that you are thinking about it. If you look at team efficiency, then in actual fact, when people come together, think about when you last joined a team yourself or a group of people. What can happen there is a very similar shaped curve. And if you look at the green writing, if you substitute team efficiency for mood over time, then the curve that people follow in this model, it's called Tuckman's model of team development. It is old, but it's very reasonable and logical. Then this is what can happen. You have a process of coming together as a team, and you start working, and you start to understand what the people around you are like. There's a sort of joy of joining people, but then you have to work out what it is that people bring as a strength. And that's the process of storming. Now, in actual fact, the efficiency of the team, when you're storming, when you're finding out what people do, and you're perhaps having a little bit of an argument about how the way you go about things, then in actual fact, your efficiency can drop for a while until you get used to each other, and then the curve goes up again, and you actually start to perform better. The whole idea of a team is you've got different ideas, different approaches, and once people understand each other, then you get into this process of performance and performing better. I hope that makes sense, and it follows the same curve. So let's look at what this means. If you add the mood changes together, where people are uncertain because things are changing rapidly, you put people together to produce results, and people come together almost naturally to do certain things together. And if you know about this curve and this process, you can do an awful lot to get to the point of performing better. And managing a team, if you are actually managing that team or influencing that team, look at this curve. If you could, let's say, reduce the depth of the storming approach, the depth of depression. If you could shorten the time between a team coming together and letting go and then testing things out, norming and performing, then in actual fact, what you will find is that the speed of the team coming together and being valuable is going to shorten, and you'll get results earlier. So anything you can do to bring that about is well worth trying. Shorten that time to performing. I'm hoping this makes sense. Please do ask questions as we go along. So that curve I'm using for mood, I'm using for team efficiency, and I'm using it for team development. Question is, of course, is how do you actually bring that about? Now, I think, and the approach I've taken with this webinar is to go back and look at a bit of history and a bit of theory about it, so we can use that as a stepping stone for looking at what we really do about it in the future. And just to add some weight to all of that, I could, and because I'm an academic, I'm inclined to go for theory and say, look, that proves it. So I've put a little bit of relevant here, and I'm a bit cynically said perhaps unexciting academic views, but I just want to read some of these out and get you to think about it. People are much more accepting, the top one, of change when they are involved in the process of planning and implementing the change. Now, I want to draw out of that when they are involved in the process. So there's something I want you to think about moving forward. Involving people in the process. Now, with the process of change that's going on at the moment, the rapidity, the constant nature of change, then it's relevant to the way that people work together. If you can involve people in the reasons why things are happening, then so much the better. I will come on to that a little bit later. The left-hand group of of statements there. It's possible to create strong pressure for change in a group by establishing a shared perception of the need for change, thus making the source of pressure for change lie within the group. Okay, so now we're looking at the way people work together, add it to the top statement, give people information about how things are working, then get them to work together and give them the responsibility and understanding the need for change and doing something about it and working together with it, and you have ownership. So when you're managing a team, if you can create the ownership within the team, then you'll get action. Information related to the need for the change and consequence of change must be shared by all relevant members of the group. Well, yeah, okay, I've included that to say, hang on a minute, everybody needs to be involved. And just a thought, changes in one part of the group produce strain in other parts of the system. So a team working together, producing outcomes, you've got to look at the outcomes they're producing. And I would say to make a team work really well, it's things that they pass on to other teams need to be considered. There is a thought which I would like you to look at and consider, make your own minds up about. Individuals' attitudes and behaviour, this is the one on the right of the slide, individuals' attitude and behaviour are influenced by the groups they belong to, suggesting that groups rather than individuals should be the target for change. Well, possibly. You could make your decisions about that. I would say that groups, when they come together to be a proper team, need to be understanding each other and need to accept that there are individual strengths in the team, in the individuals within that team, that you need to use. And that's why you bring people together sometimes, is you've got different strengths that add up to the whole. Okay. Quick rattling of paper while I move on to the next phase. Okay, so what do you do about all of this? And I think there's no easy answer to this. I'm asking you to just think about it. There's some ideas I'm putting here about practical options. And I've got 3 slides coming up. On this one and the next one, I'm talking about issues. Now, issues is an interesting word to use because not all problems of teams, not all situations with teams are issues. But maybe we could look at issues of teams coming together to start off with and then look at the advantages. I think at the moment, in our current working environment, we've got overload from change, we've got new information processes to understand and work with, and the constant pressure of doing that. So what are your options for dealing with that? Okay. Options are, and that's the green box, understand by communicating and asking. Right? So if you're managing a team or influencing a team, really, this isn't rocket science, folks. It's standard in many respects. But communicate ideas, communicate why things are being done, and ask for people's responses, ask for people's ideas. Empathise with what pressures they may be under. Explain the processes and effects of change to help the team understand themselves. That's what I've just tried to do by using those graphs, those curves, is to understand the processes that people go through. Encourage discussion, get people to talk about it. That's the whole idea of a team. If you can create a culture of solution-based results by not putting anybody down who comes up with an idea, pulling ideas out of people of all parts, getting all people to contribute, then you are on a positive route. Now, I've put down here coaching and mentoring, and I think at a later stage you will be doing, there will be a webinar about coaching and mentoring. We mentioned it at the beginning of this webinar. So coaching and mentoring is about respecting the individual, pulling information from them that they own. And the other thing is leading the way. Right? Great believer, in fact, that if you are influencing, supporting, leading, managing a team, you need to go there first. You want to be open and getting them to join in. And with that, the benefits of doing that is you get very much more buy-in, you get very much more ownership, you will get mutual support, and you get productivity, and productivity will increase, and you may end up keeping staff that you might have lost. Now, here's a point I really must make, and that is because people know more nowadays, because the internet exists, because they have mobile phones and they can communicate with each other in an instant. They know where they sit in an organisation. They know what's going on around a lot more, certainly than when I started to work, so that they like jobs in an organisation, whether they're a team or an individual within an organisation, jobs are not for life anymore. And people also know about their rights and what they can and can't do, what they're able to do. And they will make their own choices. They're very, very much more independent. So when you're bringing a team together, to recognise that is important. And if you can get ownership of what's happening with the individual, then in actual fact, I think that ownership, them realising why they're there within the organisation, realising that they are trusted to do a job and to work with other people, and that you're giving the responsibility, you're empowering the team to make decisions, then that's going to help create a team that works together. It's going to create individuals that own what they're doing. Okay, let's move on to the second one. More issues. Refers to what I was just talking to. I would suggest that attitudes nowadays are a little bit more cynical. There are the social pressures and belief in the environment are perhaps a little more cynical, and sometimes people can be a little bit more aggressive about that. Perhaps it's a too strong a word to use, but more assertive about their own approach to life. And as I said already, jobs aren't for life anymore. People move around a lot more. If you've invested in employing people and putting them together to work together, and they have a key role to play in your organisation, you don't want to lose them, particularly if they're very good people. A way of keeping people is an option, is demonstrate respect for views. Right? We talked about coaching and mentoring on the last slide, asking questions, understanding, listening, empathising. Demonstrate respect for views and opinions. You don't have to agree, but if people are heard and the function and the role that they are performing they understand, then you're more likely to keep people together and you're more likely to bring their expertise into the organisation. If you can explain processes and effective change, I've talked about this again before, it helps people understand what they're doing as a team and understand themselves. Put something in green here, and I'm highlighting at this point, communicate. Communicate as much reasoning and background detail as you can. I have a belief, it may be mistaken and totally open to argument on this, but if you can take a risk and give more information out, particularly about the role that you want people to take in coming together and the why you want them to do it, then people actually take that responsibility, usually very positively. And I'd argue communication is important. If you can give more information, take the risk and give more perhaps than you would normally do, then that actually is very motivating. It helps people own the reasons why they're doing things. Now, I said at the top here that you don't have to agree. If you don't agree, that's fine. But if you're going to make a decision, which sometimes you can do, you don't lose this right, particularly if you own a business or you manage in a business, you don't lose the right to make a final decision. But if you can explain why you've made that decision and the reasons, people may understand it better. Okay, so, and I'm just included there, of course, maintain, encourage a solution-based culture and attitude, and lead the way. Same as before. Benefits, understanding of staff, and that can apply both ways. You understand staff more, and they understand you more, and why they're doing things. And I'm really pushing for this ownership by individuals. It's self-ownership, self-motivation is really important nowadays. People need to be in control a lot more than they ever used to, I would argue, at work. Okay, if there's any negative attitude, the benefits on there are the same before. I'm not going to talk any more about that, but attitude moderates, actually. The more you're inclusive and the more information you can risk giving, then in fact, attitude moderates and becomes more positive. Okay, last one of these slides. There is a thought nowadays that about structures of organisations that I'd like you to think about. Okay, there are opportunities. Flatter structures, that means there aren't as many levels of hierarchy. That's been going on for a number of years now, and it continues. Means that staff at all levels have to take more responsibility for actions. One of the things I would say to you guys, if you are running a team, if you can't know all the answers, and to be honest, you shouldn't be expected to. Life is getting too complex. There's too much change going on around for you to know everything, even if it's your own business. You've got to rely and trust the people that you manage to be able to make decisions, to be able to think about and decide and create an action-based outcome. And you've got to trust them to do it, take the risk and let them get on with it. There's also, let's be real, there's a pressure in many areas of business to get more for less. That's always been, perhaps as much as there is nowadays, as much nowadays as there's ever been, probably a little bit more. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here, but you know what I mean, is there's very much pressure to get more done out of the people that are in existing jobs. So here's something that I want you to think about, the options here. Trust your staff more, take a risk, let them make a decision. If you're doubtful about a team coming together, then pick something for them to work on that you can actually let them risk. You can afford to fail on once in a while. People will learn more from failing than they actually will from being successful. So people need to learn how to take responsibility. You might need to give them the time to do that, but trust them to do it. You can build up their responsibility as time goes on. Seek their solutions and ideas and information. And remember that when people are coming together as a team, they may not be at the same levels within an organisation, but somebody who you may not expect to have the answers sometimes does. So you've got to listen to everybody and seek and allow everybody to contribute their ideas and information. Again, the one in green, I'm not going over that. Communicate as much reasoning as you can. Take a risk. Giving slightly more is better than giving slightly less. Caution on that is some people can get too overloaded. I've already said change is a problem. So you've got to manage how much information you give. But take a risk rather more than rather less. Okay, sponsor team working. Let's go to the last one in the options box. Sponsor team working and empower their decision making. That's what I'm saying. Put a team together. Sometimes you can walk away, leave them to it and say, come back to me and I will implement what you say. That works. I'm beginning to run out of time, so I need to make some progress. Benefits are pretty well the same as I've covered. You get respect from people. Employees are more motivated to work with you. They know you can't do it alone. Okay. As I said before, you don't always have to take their ideas and solutions, but reasoning why you're making decisions will help them. Okay, now we talked about measuring. It's within the title. Now here is something that I think is really quite simple. You are all observational people. You can go on the internet and you can find team measurement tools. Okay, you can do that. You can fill questionnaires into the cows come home. But I'm really recommending here is actually just observe. Hear the response, be aware of a response, act on it where you can. You can look at things like absenteeism figures. Observe time of people who are not working within the working day. One of the biggest signs of people not being engaged is that people, they'll go on a coffee break and it's 10 minutes longer than it would normally be, and so on and so forth. If people are motivated to work, they'll come back. They'll come back earlier. And you can, of course, look at productivity. You can observe, you can get a feel for people's responses. And it's not rocket science. I've used that twice, what a horrible phrase, but never mind, you know what I mean. Observing what they do, just seeing the response. And if you do something different, which I'm encouraging you to do, then in actual fact, it's something you can see, be observant, be aware of what the results are. Okay, so I'm going to summarize now in a couple of slides. What you need to do more of, I reckon, get the best out of a team, and it will work with individuals, but particularly team working. Give information, take a risk, slightly more is better than slightly less, support and advise. Take information, support and advice from the individuals and from the teams. The person in the least influential position in your organisation may have the most influential knowledge or idea. It should not be ignored. Listen. And when you listen, hear and respond. Act positively on what you hear when you can. Discuss and explain if you can't. Okay? Practice your questioning skills. Open questions are very often the best option. What, who, where, those type of questions. If I asked you, is your car blue? I'll get a yes or a no answer. How and where, open questions. Very much more useful for getting answers out to people. Right? Consider taking coaching qualification and a mentoring qualification. Understand more of how it is for an individual to be managed by you. Think about that for a minute. What's it like to be in the shoes of one of the people that you are managing, if you are a manager? Team response is more likely to be better considered than an individual. That's why you bring teams together. And the principle is 2 minds are greater than 1. Okay. Congratulate also, by the way. Don't forget, positive working together and effective actions. The very simplest of things are very motivational. Congratulate success and say thank you. And that will take you a million miles. People forget, believe it or not, to say thank you because they think, well, people are coming to work, and it's very, very easy to forget that people want to be appreciated. Empowerment is very important. Allow more latitude for staff taking decisions. I'm sorry that the picture's overtaken here, but making decisions and acting so that things go well. As I said, more is learned from getting things wrong than right. And perhaps my final comment is, remember Richard Branson's advice. I think this is so true. And that is, look after your staff well, and they will look after your clients, your customers, and they'll be motivated to do it. And folks, that's the end of what I've got to say. So thank you for listening. I hope there's something here that stimulated you to try and do something or to act in a different way. And I'm going to hand over back to Sarah, and hopefully I'll hear from you. Take care.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you to everybody who's taken the time out to listen to this webinar today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, we are recording the webinar, so that will be made available to you with all of the slides for you to access. So look out for that link in the email, where you can access this webinar and all other past webinars that we've run since we were doing this series. If you get a chance, please provide your feedback at the end of today's session on the questionnaire that will be displayed shortly, and do remember to register for future events at the quarrying.org website. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.